$47,000. That is the amount Sean Hannity earned per hour in 2025 while telling his viewers that working class Americans were being destroyed by socialism. The math was simple enough. His Fox News contract guaranteed him $42 million annually for approximately 900 hours of broadcast time. $47,000 every hour. To explain to truck drivers and teachers and retired factory workers why raising the minimum wage would ruin the economy, Representative Jasmine Crockett had that number memorized. She had others too. And on the evening of March 11th, 2026, when she walked into Fox News Studio 1 in Midtown Manhattan for what Sean Hannity had billed as a fair and honest debate on Democratic extremism, she carried them with her in a navy blue accordion folder that looked deceptively thin. Hannity had been promoting the segment for 3 days. AOC was too scared to come on, he told his audience on Monday. Ilhan Omar declined, but Jasmine Crockett actually agreed to show up. Let's see if she can defend the indefensible. So the promotional clips showed Hannity at his desk, sleeves rolled up, looking directly into camera with the expression of a prosecutor preparing for a slam dunk cross-examination. His audience knew what to expect. Hannity asked rapid-fire questions, interrupted constantly, ran clips over the guest's objections, and declared victory before the guest could finish a sentence. It was performance art disguised as debate, and he had perfected it over 27 years. What Hannity did not know was that Jasmine Crockett had spent the previous 6 weeks studying every interview he had conducted in 2025 with a Democratic guest. She had cataloged his interruption patterns. She had timed his question to interruption intervals. She had identified his 11 favorite deflection topics and the exact phrasing he used to pivot away from facts he could not dispute. She had, in essence, reverse engineered his entire argumentative playbook and built a folder specifically designed to dismantle it. The segment began exactly as Hannity's audience expected. The screen showed a split image. Hannity on the left and here in his standard blue shirt and dark tie, sitting behind his curved desk with the American flag visible over his shoulder, and Crockett on the right in a burgundy blazer, seated in the guest chair with the folder closed on her lap. Hannity smiled his trademark smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes, and launched immediately into his opening salvo. Congresswoman Crockett, thank you for actually having the courage to come on the program. I know your colleagues were too afraid to defend what your party is doing to this country, but you're here, so let's get right to it. And since he's sorry, he leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on the rhythmic intensity his fans love. Under Democrat leadership, we have seen inflation destroy working families. We have seen the border completely collapse. We have seen crime skyrocket in every major city. And your response is to propose more spending, more taxes, and more socialist policies that will bankrupt what's left of the middle class. How do you defend that record? Crockett let the question finish. She did not attempt to interrupt. She sat completely still, her hands resting on the closed folder, her expression pleasant but unreadable. The silence after Hannity's question lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough to be noticeable, short enough to avoid dead air. When she spoke, her voice was conversational, almost gentle. Sean, I appreciate the question. Before I answer it, I'd like to establish something about the format we're using tonight. Are you planning to let me respond fully, or should I expect to be interrupted? Hannity blinked. Guests did not usually open by questioning the format. They opened by defending themselves. He recovered quickly, his smile widening. Congresswoman, I have never interrupted a guest who's making a factual argument. If you want to defend your party's failures, go right ahead. America's watching. Crockett nodded slowly, as if considering this. Okay. Then let's establish the facts. See someone say, and Anna's inbox, she opened the folder with deliberate care. The camera caught a glimpse of tab dividers and printed spreadsheets. You just said that under Democratic leadership, inflation has destroyed working families. Let's define our terms. When you say Democratic leadership, are you referring to the period from January 2021 to the present? Hannity's smile tightened slightly. This was not how this was supposed to go. Guests were supposed to get defensive, not ask clarifying questions. Yes. The Biden-Harris administration, your administration. Perfect, Crockett said. She pulled a single sheet from the first tab section. Then let's look at inflation data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics Peak inflation under the Biden administration was 1% in June 2022. As of February 2026, inflation is at 4%. That's a 73% reduction from the peak. The current rate is lower than the average inflation rate during the Trump administration's final 18 months, which was 7%. She set the sheet on the armrest of her chair angled toward the camera. So when you say inflation has destroyed working families under Democratic leadership, are you referring to the peak that occurred 3.5 years ago, or are you referring to the current rate, which is lower than what we had under Republican leadership? Hannity did not pause. That peak happened because of Democrat spending. The so-called American Rescue Plan dumped trillions of dollars into an economy that $9 trillion, Crockett said quietly. She had not raised her voice. She had not moved. Not trillions. $1, $9 trillion. And if we're attributing inflation to federal spending, we should probably mention that the Trump administration added $8, $4 trillion to the national debt, including $3, $1 trillion in COVID-related spending before Biden took office. The CARES Act alone was $2 trillion. So if spending causes inflation, why are we only concerned about it when Democrats do it? Hannity's face flushed slightly. The CARES Act was bipartisan and necessary because so was the American Rescue Plan, Crockett said. Her tone had not changed. It was still calm, still measured, still clinical. It passed the House with bipartisan support, but you just called it a Democratic failure. So which is it? Are bipartisan spending bills good when Republicans support them and bad when Democrats do? I'm trying to understand the standard. The studio went quiet for a fraction of a second. Hannity recovered by pivoting to his second prepared attack. Let's talk about the border then, since you want to talk about standards. Under your party's open border policies, we have seen record numbers of illegal crossings, fentanyl pouring into our communities, and 4 million apprehensions in fiscal year 2023, Crockett said, pulling a second sheet from the folder. That's the number you're referring to, highest on record. But apprehensions measure enforcement, not open borders. If the border were open, there would be no apprehensions. The reason the number is high is because border agents are catching people. She looked directly into the camera. In fiscal year 2025, apprehensions dropped to 7 million. That's a 29% decrease. Fentanyl seizures are up 47% over the same period, which means interdiction is working. Hannity leaned forward, his voice rising. But those are just the people we caught. What about the gotaways? What about the fact that we have no idea who's in this country because your party refuses to enforce? 4 million, Crockett said. She had not raised her voice to match his. The contrast was immediate and stark. His volume had increased, hers had dropped. That's the estimated number of undocumented immigrants who entered during the Trump administration, according to DHS data. If we're concerned about gotaways, we should probably acknowledge that the problem predates this administration by decades. She pulled a third document, this one with a visible chart. This is a 30-year graph of border apprehensions from Customs and Border Protection. The highest peaks occurred in 1986, 2000, and 2007, all under split or Republican control. The current numbers are elevated, but they're not historically unprecedented. So when you say Democrats have destroyed border security, what baseline are you using? Hannity's jaw tightened. He was used to guests who stumbled over statistics or got flustered by his interruptions. Crockett was doing neither. She was matching him fact for fact, and her composure was making his escalating energy look increasingly aggressive by comparison. Congresswoman, with all due respect, you're cherry-picking numbers to defend a failed agenda, Hannity said. Let's talk about crime. Violent crime in major cities run by Democrats has exploded. Carjacking, smash and grabs, retail theft. Americans don't feel safe in their own communities, and your party wants to defund the police. How do you defend that? Terry in IEC saying sorry. Crockett tilted her head slightly as if genuinely puzzled. Sean, which member of Congress has proposed legislation to defund the police? Hannity blinked. Your party has repeatedly called to defund. Which member? Crockett repeated. Can you name one currently serving member of the House or Senate who has introduced a bill to defund police departments? Hannity opened his mouth and closed it. His hand gestured vaguely. The rhetoric from your party, rhetoric isn't legislation, Crockett said. Her voice was still even, but something in it had sharpened. You just accused my party of wanting to defund the police. I'm asking you to name a single member who has actually tried to do it through the legislative process. One name. The silence stretched. 3 seconds. 5 and 8. Hannity's face had gone from flush to a deeper red. He pivoted again. The point is that Democrats are soft on crime, and the statistics prove it. Look at what's happening in Chicago, in Philadelphia, and Crockett pulled another document. Violent crime dropped 13% nationally in 2024, according to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report. That's the largest single-year decrease in 50 years. Murder rates are down in 27 of the 30 largest cities. Property crime is at a 40-year low. These are the most recent statistics available. So when you say crime has exploded, what data are you citing? Hannity stared at her. The rhythm of the interview had completely shifted. He was supposed to be asking the questions. He was supposed to be controlling the pace. But somehow, without ever raising her voice or changing her expression, Crockett had turned every one of his attacks into a question he could not answer. Sean, Crockett said, and for the first time there was something almost kind in her voice. I know this format usually works for you. You ask rapid fire questions, you don't wait for complete answers, and you declare victory when the guest gets flustered. But I'm not flustered. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've been cross-examined by people much better at this than you are. Hannity's face went absolutely rigid. Congresswoman, I've been doing this for 27 years, and I've been trying cases for 9, Crockett said in court. Under oath, where the facts actually matter. And she pulled a 4th sheet from the folder. This is a transcript from your show on February 8th, 2026. You told your audience that the Biden administration had destroyed American energy independence. You said we were producing less oil than at any point in the last decade. And so, in Marisol, she looked up from the sheet. That was false. The United States produced a record 2 million barrels of crude oil per day in 2025. That's the highest production in American history, higher than any year under Trump, higher than any year under Obama. It's not an opinion. It's data from the Energy Information Administration. She set the sheet on top of the others, building a small pile on the armrest. On January 22nd, you said that unemployment was skyrocketing under Democratic policies. Unemployment is 6%. That's near a 50-year low. On March 3rd, you said the stock market was collapsing under socialist policies, and the S&P 500 is up 34% since January 2021. The Dow hit a record high 11 days ago. She pulled another sheet. On February 14th, you said Democrats wanted to ban fossil fuels. There is no proposed legislation to ban fossil fuels. On January 9th, you said Kamala Harris refused to visit the border. She's made 4 trips to the southern border since taking office. These aren't differences of opinion, Sean. These are statements of fact that you made on this program that are demonstrably false. The studio had gone completely silent. Hannity's hand gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles visible white against the dark wood. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The cameras caught it perfectly. Sean Hannity, speechless. 10 seconds, 15, 20. Crockett closed the folder with a soft snap that somehow carried through the studio microphone. You asked me how I defend my party's record, she said. I defend it with facts. The same facts you have access to. The same data that's available to anyone who wants to look. The difference is I actually looked. Hannity finally found his voice, but it had lost the controlled confidence that had opened the segment. You're just reading talking points from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Crockett said, from the FBI, from the Energy Information Administration, from Customs and Border Protection. These are federal agencies, Sean. They exist regardless of which party is in power. The data doesn't care about your narrative. Hannity's voice rose, anger bleeding through the professional veneer. You come on this program and accuse me of lying to my audience. I didn't accuse you of anything, Crockett said. Her voice had gone quieter, and the contrast made Hannity's rising volume sound almost hysterical. I just read you your own words and compared them to the data. If that feels like an accusation, maybe you should ask yourself why. Hannity slammed his hand on the desk. The sound cracked through the audio feed. I have been defending working Americans for decades while people like you have been trying to destroy this country with your socialists. You make $47,000 an hour, Crockett said. Hannity stopped mid-sentence. His mouth hung open. $47,000, Crockett repeated. That's your hourly rate based on your publicly reported contract and your annual broadcast hours. You spent the last 15 minutes telling me that Democrats are destroying working families. But a teacher making $52,000 a year would have to work an entire year to earn what you make in 90 minutes. And Dana, sir, she leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, something resembling emotion crossed her face. Not anger, something colder. So when you talk about working Americans, Sean, who exactly are you talking about? Because from where I'm sitting, you haven't been a working American in a very long time. The silence returned. But this time it was absolute. Hannity sat frozen, his face cycling through expressions, shock, rage, humiliation, as if he could not decide which one to land on. His hand remained pressed flat on the desk. His jaw worked soundlessly. 22 seconds of complete silence. Finally, Hannity turned to the control room, his voice tight and clipped. We're going to take a break. When we come back, no, Crockett said. Hannity's head snapped toward her. Excuse me? You said you'd let me respond fully if I was making factual arguments. I'm not done. Her voice was still calm, still measured, but now it carried weight. You asked me to defend my party's record on inflation, the border, and crime. I did. I provided specific data points from federal agencies. You responded with rhetoric, deflection, and demonstrably false claims. So now I'd like to ask you a question. Hannity stared at her, visibly uncertain whether to cut to commercial or let her continue. The cameras were still rolling. His audience was watching. He had built a 27-year career on never backing down. Go ahead, he said, the words forced through clenched teeth. Crockett picked up the small stack of papers from the armrest and held them at chest height, visible to the camera. In the last 3 months, you have made 46 factual claims on this program about Democratic policies. I have transcripts of all of them. Of those 46 claims, 32 are contradicted by data from federal agencies. That's a 70% error rate, not interpretation, not spin. Direct factual errors. She set the stack down gently. My question is this: do you actually believe the things you say on this program, or do you just not care whether they're true? The silence that followed was suffocating. Hannity's face had gone from red to something approaching purple. His breathing was audible over his microphone. His hand gripped the desk so hard his entire arm trembled. This interview is over, Hannity said. He ripped the microphone from his lapel and stood. Cut the feed. We're done. Sean, the voice of the producer, came through his earpiece, audible on the open mic. I said, cut it. Hannity shouted and walked off camera. Crockett remained in her seat. The camera stayed on her for a moment, capturing her sitting perfectly still, her hands folded on the closed folder, her expression unchanged. Then the feed went to commercial 37 seconds early. By the time the commercial break ended, Fox had pivoted to a pre-recorded segment on tax policy. Sean Hannity did not return. The guest host who finished the program made no mention of what had happened, but the damage was already done. The clip went viral within minutes. Not the full interview, the 22 seconds of silence after Crockett asked Hannity whether he believed his own words. That silence became the story. By midnight, it had been viewed 40 million times. By morning, every major news outlet was covering it. Late-night comedians played it in full. Political analysts dissected it frame by frame. But for those who watched the full segment, what stayed with them was not the silence. It was the systematic dismantling that came before it. It was watching someone who had built a career on interrupting and overwhelming guests get methodically taken apart by someone who simply refused to be interrupted, someone who had done the homework, someone who brought receipts. Jasmine Crockett walked out of Fox News Studio One that night carrying the same Navy accordion folder she had walked in with. It was still thin. It had always been thin, but it had been enough.